welcome back to your Untamed Life podcast. Today, I am super excited to chat with Matty Lansdown. He is a scientist, a nutritionist, and all-around health expert who's passionate about helping people break free from the grips of emotional eating and sugar addiction. Also, my favorite podcast host of the How to Not Get Sick and Die podcast. So good. It got me on my revolutionary leg of my health journey, and it actually got me doing this podcast. So Maddie's here to drop some serious knowledge and share how we can all level up our health by focusing on what really matters. So welcome, Maddie. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for such kind words in the intro, and awesome to have been some part of the inspiration to create this show too. That's great.
Yeah, thanks. It was great. Yeah, you've really inspired me. I listened to you a lot during the pandemic as well. Thanks
Yeah, I
for
think a
getting
lot
me
of
through
people
that.
a lot of people found me during that time with some ideas that were maybe a bit different to what they were hearing elsewhere.
Yeah, that was nice. I was listening to you about, and it was like helping me with my health. And then we got into it together, and I was like, all right, we're going through this together. It'll be great. Yeah. So thanks for being here and coming on and taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for the invite.
Awesome. So I'd love for you to just I usually start off by just asking, why don't you just start by telling us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, sure. So, I guess I'm a podcast host of the How to Not Get Sick and Die podcast, first and foremost. And then I guess on the back end of that, I run emotional binge and overeating programs, mostly for women. That just seems to be the demographic that my content resonates with. But I do work with the odd man that comes through that's open to a bit of direction and instruction, which most men aren't, which is why I probably work with women a lot more. I find women are a bit more like, I don't care where the help comes from, just tell me where to go. Whereas men are a little more, I'll figure it out, right?
Yeah.
So I work with a lot of women in that world, and I guess the type of person that would encompass is anybody that feels like they've been trying to lose weight or trying to fix their gut health or trying to develop a healthy relationship with food, and they've done all of the fad diets. They've lost weight, gained weight, cycled back and forth, or tried to fix their gut health, and they still end up back at the chocolate or eating the foods which hurt their body, and they can't kind of quit or can't commit to the healthy habits. And so that's why the work we do is more about the emotions and the psychology and the mindset, which inevitably dives deep into stories of self-worth and self-sabotage, and whether you're lovable, whether you're worthy, all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's sort of taking a very different approach to health, nutrition, and the way that we treat our bodies with food and drink.
Oh my God, I love that. Why do you believe that that's all stemming from the mindset? Why do we have so much of this emotional eating and sugar addiction and all of these issues nowadays?
Yeah, I think firstly, because if information was the transformational variable, nobody would need help because
Mm.
we've all got the information. There's very few people that have sat in front of me, and when I said, "What's healthy food?" they didn't say, "Oh, vegetables, fruit, meat." Like everybody generally knows what to eat. Sure, we're all arguing online about the individual dietary template, and nutritionists and doctors and whatever, we're all shaming each other and saying your diet's awful, our mine's better. But the reality is, we're really just talking about the very 1%, the fine end bits of what we're talking about. Fundamentally, I've never spoken to anyone in a low socioeconomic group or a high socioeconomic group that didn't know what healthy food was. And that to me is enough evidence to say, well, if everybody knows what healthy food is, why aren't they eating healthy then? And then that unlocks two sides to one coin. Of one side of that coin is the psychology. It's like, if you know and you're not doing better, what's going on there? Right? If and I think most people, and Jordan Peterson talks about this, that most people can quite confidently sit down and write 100 things about their life that need to change that they know the answer to. And the question is, well, why aren't I doing it? And that means that it's something in your head. Or the other side of that coin is the nutrition industry is kind of rigged. The packaging that we use is designed to manipulate your brain chemistry, what the components of the food, the sugar content, the fat content, the salt content, the caffeine content, all put together into this thing called the bliss point, or having an effect called the Dorito effect in some contexts, which is just this food that is never found in nature. We're unable to find it, and therefore we become addicted to it, or hyper attached to it, because it produces a dopamine pleasure response, which has its own twofold effect, which is it's either producing happiness and pleasure in the body, or it's pushing down, masking, and burying pain, discomfort, trauma that we don't want to confront. And as it comes up, here's a really easy tool to access dopamine and pleasure to just cover it up and pretend it's not happening in exactly the same way that an alcoholic will drink themselves into oblivion so they don't have to feel, don't have to be present. We do the same thing with food. It's just a little more gray because an alcoholic can get rid of alcohol and still live an abundantly healthy life. It gets really confusing with food because we all still need to eat to live. So where is the line? And when we put the line down, is that in a place that causes you to rebel? Is that line in a place where it causes you to not care about yourself? It's a really sort of, it can be a really complex sort of place to navigate.
That's fascinating. Okay, so when you draw that line, what do you mean about not caring about yourself and that?
Yeah, good question. So basically, the thing with psychology is that the same thing that two different people can have the same thing that makes them react in opposite ways or behave in opposite ways. So if you have a story of when I was a kid, maybe it wasn't a major traumatic event, and plenty of people have those, but it was just the idea that you're, as a unique person, and this is my own personal story actually, is that as a unique individual, you had a desire to express, you were extroverted, you wanted to create, you were curious, and you lived in a family or you had parents that were quite structured and organized, and that made you feel limited, right? And so this is a really superficial description of what can eventually be reflected upon as some kind of ongoing psychological trauma or abuse, whatever it is. And I know there's a lot of people that are like, oh, everybody's traumatized these days. And sure, let's not call it trauma, but it's still having a consequence, right? Whatever happened, it still has a consequence later on. And so this person that feels suppressed means that they get to a place in their life where they go one of two directions. Either they rebel hardcore, that's what I did, right? They break all the rules, they push all the limits, they test everything, and usually get themselves into a lot of trouble, either physically, health wise, or even with the law, or with family members, or friends, or whatever it is, right? Or they go the other way, which is they continue to suppress themselves. And this builds resent within them, right? They build resent towards themselves for not having the confidence to step out and do the thing. Mum and dad aren't here anymore. You're 25, you're 45, you're 60. Why can't I back myself? And so then they attract partners in that confirm that kind of psychological status as well, which means they start to resent their partner for embodying that same oppressive authoritarian role upon themselves. So the rebellion over here on the left is sort of on one side is, raging against the machine and being super self-destructive in the name of control and freedom, even though it's destroying oneself. And then the other side is that you're continuing to destroy self based on limitations which were previously put upon you. Both of those scenarios end up people back to a place where they're like, I don't like myself, because both of those things are escaping the truth that I wish I was experiencing.
Wow, that's fascinating. So both people end up at the fridge. Is that where we're going?
Yeah, well, in this, it can be the fridge, it can be porn, it can be
Food.
gambling, but in the context that I work, yeah, it's the fridge and or wine.
Mhm.
They're the sort of two that come together a lot of the time. And I often say to people that whenever you make a move in the opposite direction of something that's good for you, that's where the question needs to be asked. Why am I moving away from what's good for me? Why am I moving towards something that's unhelpful or destructive? And you might have a completely logical answer for that, like, oh, I've got trauma and I don't want to think about it. And it's like, great, but the act of doing that creates ongoing smaller problems which eventuate in obesity, diabetes, cancer, early death, suicide, depression, right? So it's either where the short-term escape of a temporary discomfort or the creation of micro discomforts into a lifelong sentence, which isn't good.
Yeah, interesting. So is that when people they're locked into the addiction of the actual act, or is it they're locked in the addiction of the foods, or I guess it's both, right? And untangling that.
Yeah, I always think there's a spectrum. I don't think about it in a black and white way. And I think on some days we're at either end of the spectrum. Like some days we can wake up, we're super tired. If you've got kids, maybe you haven't slept, maybe you're arguing with your partner, maybe you're in a job you hate. And that day, it's actually just your biology saying, hey, we need sugar because you're knackered, you're tired, you haven't been eating well, you're doing all the things. But then you might be on holiday, well rested, everything's peaceful and amazing, but you're on the other end of the spectrum, right? Which is that it's just my psychology driving me. And many people end up in that situation where they swing on the door of the fridge. And they're like, I don't even know why I'm here. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know why I'm here, right? And if you're not biologically hungry, then you're doing it for a psychological reason, because that hunger that is created in the body when we seek actual nutrition and calories and energy, that drives us to eat every day. But if we're swinging on the door of the fridge or we're going shopping and we're not even hungry and we just keep walking up and down the chocolate aisle and literally saying to ourselves, I don't even want this, but I'm still here. That's 100% being driven by psychology. And so I think we kind of go back and forth on that spectrum. Some people are more on, one end of nutrition. They've just been given the wrong advice, or they're getting their health advice from, cereal boxes that are saying this is fortified with, vitamin D. And it's like, wow, best source of vitamin D is Cocoa Pops. Amazing. That's just the wrong health advice. But most people get that advice from the supermarket. And then, of course, a lot of people that I work with are sort of on the other end, which is that there have been traumas and there have been difficulties and there have been belief systems passed down to them, which mean that they are self-destructive and food is their tool of choice.
Mm-hmm. Okay. But there is a balance where you can have sugar in your life and still be doing this in like a healthy manner.
Yeah, I would say that I have clients that, and well, I mean, a lot of us do, romanticize that idea for a long period of time
Mm-hmm.
until they get to a point where they just say,
It's too far.
I just cannot win this battle.
Yeah.
Right. And there's different ways to do that. So there's moderators and abstainers when it comes to any type of addictive substance, right? Or thing that we get dopamine essentially from. And some people would say they're addicted to doom scrolling, right?
Mm.
Just scrolling on their phone. And a lot of people are. And, psychological engineers in Facebook's head office have been working on that art form, and that manipulation of our behavior for a long time, just as there is a multi-billion-dollar flavor industry, which is,
Yeah.
very carefully testing every single individual molecule, literally to the molecule, in different flavors. And they figure out which one's the addictive one and they change the proportion of those flavors so it doesn't necessarily reflect nature's version of that flavor anymore. And then they put it in all of these foods, which lead to us going back into the bag, back into the bag, back into the bag, because we want this satisfaction from that type of flavor. And so, because the modern world is set up in a way which is designed to be addictive, and that's not me being, woo-woo or conspiratorial, that
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to go far to realize they've been doing that in the flavor industry, in the social media industry, in the porn industry, all of the things, the gambling industry. Um, and so I think, yeah, it's the environment we are in make it very, very difficult to be a moderator of these types of foods, which are perfectly legal. And actually, people judge you for not eating them. You go to an event and say, "Oh, I'm not going to have any cake." And people are like, "What do you mean? Are you on a diet? Like, why? Just have a bit of cake. Join in with everybody." And that's a whole conversation about them judging you for their own insufficiencies and, social rhetoric and stuff like that. But yeah, no, I definitely think it's very difficult to be a moderator in this world of people that have challenges with these foods. It can be done for sure, but it's with a bit of work.
Yeah, you have a point. Yeah, like going on the internet now, there's like the Pringles. Everyone's shocked. There's no actual potatoes in them, and I'm like,
I know.
please read the label. But yeah, I can actually like relate. Like as I've done my own like inner work and things like that. Going to the fridge now, I can go. I'm here because I'm trying to avoid something, and I close the fridge, and I'm like, wait, what is it? But I know, like,
Totally.
I had a similar growing up like you did, and I was like pushing myself down, like emotionally and suppressing like who I was, and that was causing a lot of my binge eating. So yeah, it comes a long way after the mindset part. So yeah, what you're doing is really powerful, and I've never heard of that Dorito effect before.
Oh yeah, it's a book. It's called The
Yeah.
Dorito
Oh,
Effect. You got to.
interesting. Okay, I'll have to look that one up.
It's really good. It's really good.
Yeah, amazing. So, so why do you do what do you do? Is it because of your own journey? What do you?
Um, Primarily no. Primarily it's because of my experience as a cancer scientist. So I
Mhm.
worked in cancer science for 6, 7 years, and in a cancer hospital, and it was just me organically on my own asking questions. Not from a hippie family or anything like that. And mum took us to some natural health professionals growing up, which was a bit more normal then. Mum's a nurse. I went to the hospital a lot with mum when she went to work. So I just was really curious why people were never talking about cure. I was like, I work in a cancer hospital and nobody ever talks about cure. And actually, they used to joke, just as the same in many contexts, you shouldn't say the C word.
Mm,
They would that would be joked about in conferences and meetings, that like you never
Wow.
say the C word. Like if there's a camera around or a news reporter somewhere that hears that somebody said the C word, cure, you get in big trouble.
Jesus.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, and there's laws against using the word cure, actually in different contexts. So yeah, but for me, it was just why are there no studies? I was involved in 33 clinical trials across that time. Why is nobody in any hospital around the world, because we dealt with lots of countries as well, yeah,
Hmm.
dealing with a cure. And it just kind of started there, just with curiosity and being in meetings of death audits. So just understanding, which is it's a good idea in the sense that they reflect on people that have died, which drug decisions were made, how can we do things differently next time, that kind of thing. And just hearing some of the things like, we know that chemotherapy is extremely toxic to the brain, or we know that chemotherapy has these side effects, and just curiously saying, well, why don't we do something different?
Hmm.
And firstly, that was laughed at. But also the conversations about going really, really deep on people's genetics. We went through this chapter of medicine, which is starting to shift, where genetics were everything, right? It's in your genetics, then you're screwed. If it's already there, if your mum had it, you're done for. Yeah, which is just not true. And now we're more in that epigenetic conversation a little bit now. But what I found confusing was that we would look at people's genetics and sort of say, oh, person A is, 1% different to person B. I wonder what happened in their genetics. And I'd sort of come in with my naive early 20s comment of, hey, what if they're both just fat? Like, right? Or what if they both had the last 20 years of their meals from fast food? And they'd just be like, yeah, righto, Matty, that's too simple.
Let's
Shut
not
up,
test
kid.
that though.
Yeah, let's not
Or
test
ask
that,
them.
right?
Yeah.
And then during that time, discovering that a bunch of research papers came out that showed that being overweight and obese was a precursor to Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, diabetes, atherosclerosis, and a bunch of different diseases. And so then the question for me as an individual, as all of this went on, and I started researching outside of the confines of my job, was that all right, maybe I'll become a nutritionist, because if being overweight is a precursor to all of these problems, I'll help people lose weight. Amazing. And then, so I did that, and I started speaking at wellness events and retreats and having clients for the first time, and realized that most of them knew what to eat, which is kind of where we started, right? Most of them already knew. And I would literally talk to cancer patients that I'd be like, what's your diet like? And most people in the world answer this question the same way, which is, oh, I know it could be better, Maddie. Like, I know it could be better, which again just proves they know. They know,
Hmm.
right? And so
Yeah.
that's where I made the final step into the psychological component. And then I went and studied some more, and became a specialist in binge eating and emotional eating and eating disorders. And so that's where I really understood, if all these people I see already know what they should be doing, they really don't need very much food advice. Most of them have done 20 years of dieting. They're probably nutritionists themselves in their own right. So that's kind of how I got there. Fundamentally, it was trying to help people heal from cancer, and that's how I got to where I am now.
Wow, it's so interesting. I
Yeah.
Yeah, and recently I've gone all down all the rabbit holes too, trying to be like, okay, well, what is the best foods to eat? And I always end up in the same place, and
Yes.
it's actually infuriating because I'm like, this is it. These are the only options we have. But yeah,
There's
yeah,
lots of
so
ways to be creative with food, though.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, that's what
yeah,
it
it's
leads you
just
to. Yeah,
Yeah, and like the mainstream supermarkets only sell a very small number of edible foods that
yeah,
grow in nature. And so, that's where farmers markets are important. And, you can even buy books that you start to understand where you can get different foods from. And the same with meat. We're sort of limited to 4 or 5 different meats in the mainstream supermarkets. But if you go to farms or different places that, naturally hunted stuff, you get your hands on all sorts of different meat that you can eat.
yeah, and break that monotony and all of that. Yeah,
Yeah, which
be
is good for
great.
your gut microbiome as well, to get a diversity of exposure from different plants and different meats and different food sources.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, can I just circle back for getting rid of a sugar addiction? Like, what kind of steps would you take? Is there anything people can do at home?
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, no, no. So the first one is hydration. So many
Hmm.
people, on average, Australia particularly, we only get about 51% of the hydration recommendations.
Hmm.
So, it's about 2.5 liters. Obviously, that will vary on days where you are working out, summertime, if you're outside a lot and you're sweating a lot, it's going to vary a little bit, but most people get their water from coffee or tea and or soda, soft drink. And that's a bad place to get your water from.
Yeah.
It is not a clean supply of water. So yeah, that's a big one. And then we move across to obviously food, like actual whole real food, nothing in a bag, a box, or a can. If
Mhm.
you're putting real nutrition in, you are less likely to crave anything because you're actually satiating your body. And then I guess the third thing is sleep. If you wake up sleep deprived, quite literally, it's like saying that my car now needs a bigger engine to run the same car. Right. So we need to put more fuel in. So that's why we binge eat when we're tired and we're stressed out more easily, because you're asking a machine that's designed to run for 16 hours, you're asking it to run for 20, 5 days a week, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So we literally require a little bit more energy. And because we're tired, the choices of that energy are not as good. So we're going to go to the easy convenience foods, that type of thing. But water, food, and sleep are the basis for getting anyone's psychology or biology in the right state. And then, of course, you can add in physical activity, which is going to make you hungrier. Don't fall into the trap of, eat less, move more,
Mhm.
because if you spend more energy, your metabolic requirement will go up. Just make sure that you're eating healthier food to fill that gap. So, yeah, there's heaps and then on the psychological side, the best place to start is to start journaling, which a lot of people, don't like the idea of or think it's corny or look, if you've got resistance to it, you're probably the person that needs to do it.
100%. Yeah. Is there like a number of days someone needs to like focus on this to like get over that sugar hump at all?
Oh, yeah, well, I mean,
Like just to
it's
start.
different.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say if you can do 7 days,
Yeah.
amazing. But at the same time, I'm not a big advocate for any cold turkey strategies.
Hmm.
The only people that I sort of push in that direction are someone that's just got a cancer diagnosis or a diabetes diagnosis or that needs a radical change as fast as possible.
Hmm.
But everybody knows from failing the first 250 times that every time they went radical last time, it didn't work.
Yeah.
Right? Because when you change too many variables about your reality, you have an identity crisis.
Yeah.
And that's really confronting and it feels strange and foreign. And so you just run back to who you used to be. And that might be, literally the same afternoon that you decided to change that morning.
Mhm.
Or it might be a few days in. So I'm more about let's try and do it 4 or 5 times this week rather than let's do it 7 times this week. And you might even start at 2 times. Maybe the just doing once this week is a huge victory to prove to yourself that you can do it. Because the other thing is you don't want to set people up to have more evidence that they suck at life. Right, they've already got enough of that. People beat themselves up enough. They're horrible enough to themselves. So if we give people a goal or a parameter which gives them the ability to prove themselves correct, then we're just repeating the old belief system, which is I suck and I fail and I'm shit at everything. So if we say, hey, today or this week, we're going to do it once. And if you do it twice, like who cares? We don't even care. We're not even looking at twice, right?
Yeah.
And they do it once and they're like, okay, maybe I'm not the worst human alive, right?
Yeah.
And then because that's where people are starting from. It's sad, but in people's minds, most people are starting from there. And then so we don't want to ask people to start from much higher on that scale than they are, because they either force themselves to behave like a person they don't believe they are, or they just don't do it. So I much prefer the one tweak a week, small steps, small changes over time, so that I'm setting people up for building evidence that I can be something greater than I am now.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. As you were saying that, I was like, oh, I remember you say 1 tweak a week. It's actually
Little
genius.
catchphrase.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so like, how do you help clients like tap into like their internal motivations and trying to like figure that out, especially people that haven't done before?
Yeah, it's a good question because some people come through, and I guess maybe you and I were both at this stage ourselves at some point where you just had no awareness of yourself at all.
Yeah.
You'd never actually looked back in on yourself and sort of looked in a mirror and asked yourself, why am I this way? Why
No
is
one
this
told you that
happening?
that's okay or that's something you can do. How weird.
It's so weird. Well, and even the physical body, if we go on a bit of a deeper meta level, our eyes look outwards, our nose collects data from the outside, our mouth receives things to nourish the body. So like our physical body is built in a way that's focused on the external. So it does feel a little bit unnatural to turn all of those senses in and
Mm,
say, what's actually coming from inside of me, right? And what exists within me. And so some people come through and they just say, oh, I know I eat when I'm stressed. I know I eat, when this happened, or I've been eating a lot since my mum died, but I don't know what to do or where to start or anything like that. And so step one, we don't actually have anyone change anything. We just say, keep being the same for the next couple of weeks and write it down. Write down the emotion, write down the location, write down your thoughts, and we don't necessarily do that the whole time, but we kind of want to collect some data on what is actually happening so that then we can look at the data and say, oh, why do I do that? And a lot of people in that 2 weeks say, I didn't even know that I'm always standing up when I eat, or I didn't even know that when I'm feeling sad, I go towards ice cream. They
mhm.
start these little moments of self-awareness because they're documenting their patterns. And then the next question is, how long has this pattern been going on? They're like, oh, since I was 4, or some super
Yeah.
long amount of time. And so, yeah, we begin there, just bringing that self-awareness in. And obviously, different people are at different stages. Some people are super aware already, and they're like, yep, I eat my feelings. I just need a safe place to unpack those feelings. Or I am desperate for approval and I never get it. And some of these situations end up in some pretty intense outcomes. Like some people realize they need to divorce their partner.
Mhm.
Some people realize they need to quit their job. Some people actually get remarried. That's happened before with a client.
Wow.
So there's some beautiful things that can happen too. But because I think a lot of it is our environment, the environment we grew up in, the environment in our house, the environment that we've created with a partner, with a group of friends. Because then we introduce that element of pack mentality. Humans are pack animals, we're tribal animals, and we always have a deep sense of wanting to belong. And so as
Mhm.
soon as we threaten that sense of belonging, we'll just fall in line. We'll just fall in line with the group that we're in, no matter how unhelpful or unhealthy they are, because we'd rather be safe in a group than out in the world on our own with no love, support, or attention or care, right? Um, so I think it's starting place for most people to begin breaking that cycle is to develop the awareness of what is actually going wrong to begin with.
Mm. I love that. And that's even better than being like, just journal. It's like actually just write down what you're doing. And
Yeah,
they're already starting that process of like awareness. That's so cool.
there's no invitation to be emotionally deep at all at the start. It's just,
Mm.
factually in your day, what is happening in reality.
So good. It's so much easier for everyone, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you transitioned away from being a cancer scientist, what did you do? So you went to nutritionist. Are you doing any scientific like studies on your own at this point?
Yeah, I'm back at sort of doing another nutrition degree at the moment. So just I'm sort of ticking some boxes because I went about my career in a roundabout way. I started as a research scientist and I worked in a nutritional epigenetics company. And so the way that I kind of became a nutritional therapist first was through research. And then I was able to go to an education body and say, here's all the work I've done as a day job. And I just got written off as being qualified.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's not the way that most people end up here. They go through nutrition school specifically. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm basically back at university ticking that box. And that is really to make sure that I'm taken more seriously in the mainstream conversation. Because no doubt the second anyone wants to debunk me or cancel me, they're going to say, this guy doesn't even have a legitimate nutrition degree, even though I could probably go toe to toe with most nutritionists pretty
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
So it's really just making the public feel confident about what I've got to say because I've got a big platform. And also, there's a part of it for me too that I'm like, yeah, I've got the degree, like it's like I've got a forensics degree and I've got, honors in nutrition. And then, I don't want to fall off and say, then I'm a health coach. Health coaches are fantastic, but I want to keep my own standard at the same standard.
Yeah, fair enough. Do you have any plans to go back and do any research?
Well, one of the other factors as to why I'm doing this is so that I have the capacity to do a PhD in nutrition. I don't know what I want to do yet, or if I even ever will do it. But because I'm so vocal about things that I believe are wrong with the system, I am someone that likes to put my money where my mouth is. There's so many of us on social media with opinions that are throwing, comments around and beliefs around. And I want to be able to say, this is seriously important for the health of humans. And I believe it so strongly that the system is wrong or needs to be changed that I'm going to go and do a PhD so that I can submit 1% of the conversation legitimately, because that's the language of the system is science, right? Science and money. So if I'm not willing to speak their language, I'm never going to get a seat at the table. So I want the ability to be able to do that PhD. If something comes up that I'm like, no, somebody needs to fight for this, and I've got the resources and the experience and the knowledge to do it, then yeah, that's another reason for doing this other degree, is that I want to be able to do that in the future should it call to me.
I love that. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for going toe to toe with them. And we're here to back you for that.
Thank you. Thank you. Sometimes I think I'm a bit crazy in my my ambition. I'm like, oh my God, is this even a good idea?
No, it's needed. And like, yeah, we can see what you're doing and we're here for it. We're here for sure.
Thank you.
Love it. Actually, can I ask you, do you have any like natural like go-to remedies that you go for like ailments, common ailments? Do you ever swing that way?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a couple of the books, you probably can't see them on behind me.
Yeah,
My textbooks for nutritional therapy, but also naturopathic clinical practice with subjects that I've done and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm always natural before medical.
mm-hmm.
Which is funny because I used to work in a hospital and my mum's a nurse. And but interestingly, growing up, mum as a nurse did a lot of natural stuff first before medicine, which is very much how I think we should all think about medicine, as a last resort, not as a no resort, but as a last resort. But anyway,
Yeah.
I mean, anything skin related, if you've got bites, tea tree oil is always really reliable. You can, if you find it stings too much, you can mix it with coconut oil or almond oil to calm it down a little bit. Anything gut health related, sauerkraut. That's your natural probiotics, which are far more powerful than any probiotic you will buy in a supermarket or a chemist or a pharmacy. So yeah, sauerkraut, which is fermented food, not just sauerkraut, kimchi, pickled onions, that kind of stuff that have been fermented, all really good for gut health. Anything in a bag, a box, or a can is going to contribute to the destruction of the body. So if we move in the opposite direction with whole real food, it's going to rebuild the body. So if you've got inflammation or some kind of cancer or ailment that's really or it's you've done an injury or maybe post car crash, turmeric, ginger, garlic, all really good for that kind of thing. Also really good for colds, flus. Another good one with sauerkraut is if you've got a tickle in your throat, or you feel like you've got something throaty coming and you're like, oh, my throat's a bit sore, it's a bit red, or I'm coughing a lot, is to actually get the sauerkraut and you get it on a tablespoon, split it into two, and put one chunk in between the back left tooth and your cheek in your mouth, and the same on the other side, and just let it sit there for about 20 minutes, half an hour. Don't swallow it, because all of the probiotics in the food are actually alive, unlike some of the tablets, right? Or most of the tablets. And so this bacteria will literally just crawl into your mouth off the food, and they'll populate and go to war. I like to say go to war. It sounds, clickbaity. But go to war with the stuff that's going on in your throat. So, and if you're only just hearing this for the first time and you're right in the thick of it, you might need to do it 2 or 3 times a day for a couple of days. But I know for myself that the second that I feel anything, I do it immediately and it's gone. I only need to do it once.
Wow.
So it's really, really good. And the good thing with this stuff is you really can't overdose. There's no side effects that are, dreadful that you can get from this stuff. Sure, if you have too much of something, you might feel a bit weird, but it's not going to do damage. Like too much ibuprofen, can make your gut bleed out and you can die, right?
Oh my
You're never
gosh.
going to get that from any of the stuff I just mentioned.
Yeah. And that can't happen though if you spread it out over a few days, ibuprofen, right? Just so people know.
Yeah, totally. Well, I mean, this is like I forget which year it was, but it bounces between somewhere in the top 10. It's usually around 3 to 5 in the USA, and Australia is not too dissimilar. It's a thing called iatrogenic illness. So iatrogenic illness is death from drugs, basic pharmaceutical drugs. And it's always in the top 10 to 3 across the years as to the leading cause of death in most Western countries. And ibuprofen kills 16,000 people a year, right? And so it's worth
Most
knowing.
ignored statistics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's heaps of those statistics. I mean, the fact that it's even in the top 10 should be, public outrage.
Yeah, it really should. Oh, it's so interesting. I've never heard that about the sauerkraut. In regards to sauerkraut, do you like if you just use one cabbage, one type of cabbage the whole time? Random question. Should you introduce other types of cabbage to make it more populated, or can you literally just go with that one type of cabbage and just get like amazing benefits?
Yeah, I think you can do one type of cabbage and get amazing benefits, but
Yeah.
that's in the context of making sure that the rest of your diet is
Yeah.
diverse.
Okay.
Yeah, diversity is always better. The more,
Yeah.
the more that we can get our gut to work on different things and expose it to different bacterial colonies and fungus colonies, the better.
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah. I was just like, well, what should I do? And how do you get people started on it?
Yeah,
But
well,
yeah,
that
it's
sometimes is
something.
tricky because the taste is, you've got to adapt to the taste. It takes a little while for most people
Yeah.
to say, all right, I actually like this now.
Yeah, it's true. I grew up on it, thankfully, because I'm Hungarian and they just eat sauerkraut and meat.
Yeah, which
And
is
I was like,
awesome.
best thing I inherited.
Yes, totally.
Yeah, love that. Okay. Oh shit, there's something I was gonna ask her. Anyway, that's really cool. So is there anything else that's like one preventative measure that people could take, or is it just like this overall what you just
Well,
said?
I think the number one biggest bang for buck that you can do for preventative health is lift weights. Like,
Nice.
yeah, there's a study done that showed that lifting weights and doing resistance training, I think it was 3 times a week,
Mm-hmm.
basically prevented 26 different illnesses over the course of somebody's life.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, if they could have a single pill that prevented any illness, let alone 26 of them, it'd be worth $1 billion a pill. But you can literally do it at home for free using YouTube. And I start there only to start there. Remember, the food's important. The clean water's important. The clean air's important. The happy relationships are important. But I think the number one, cheapest, easiest thing anyone can do is walk into their lounge room and do a push up, right? Or do a sit up or put YouTube on and find, even if you feel so unfit and unwell and whatever, you can literally type into YouTube. And I do this because all my workouts come from YouTube. If I've only got 10 minutes, I just type in 10-minute ab workout or 10-minute workout, no weights, 10-minute workout with weights, and you start there. And then, my usual workout's about 45, but you can start with 5 or 10-minute workouts. It's not like you have to go in all guns blazing and do an hour and then you can't walk for a week. That's not helpful, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think resistance training is the most important thing if I was to give one-liner.
I love that. I think you've thought about this. And yeah, I saw some recent MRI like slice scans of like for longevity, like building muscle for longevity when you're like 72 years old and you still have muscle, like you're still going for life, normal
Yeah.
and like functional and like it's stretched out people's expectations of what you can be like at 70 and 80. And
Yeah, I love
yeah,
that.
so definitely lift weights. That's a good.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and then the thing is, both our brain and our muscles are very much, you don't use it, you lose it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you just sit in a chair all day, and this, my grandmother is this person, and so was my great grandmother. They just sat at the kitchen table, and my nan still just sits there, and she just gets smaller every year. She gets more hunched over every year. And the idea of telling my nan to start lifting weights, oh my God, that would be, just to see her respond to that would be hilarious.
Yeah.
Um, but the thing is, you don't want to get there. You want movement to be a normal part of your life because who wants to just waste away slowly over 20 or 30 years? I've
Yeah.
yet to meet someone that's like, yeah, I'd love that. Right?
Yeah, I know,
Yeah,
but
most
we
people
have
want to
that
be around.
expectation that that's just going to
Yeah.
happen, right? And now it's being shown like it doesn't have to happen. We can just keep going.
Yeah. And most of
Yeah.
those people want to keep up with their grandkids, They
Yeah.
don't want to sit in the chair and watch them. They want to be able to go for a walk, with them in the pram or chase them around the park. Show me
Hmm.
a grandmother that wouldn't like to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, there's plenty of motivation. And everyone that jumps on a discovery call with me, if they're a mum or they're a grandma, it's I want to keep up with the kids or I want to be here for the grandkids and act in an active part of their life. And I'm sure it's exactly the same for men because I mostly talk to women, but nobody wants to waste away and be the person that misses out on everything.
Yeah. And yeah, and dads want to lift up their kids and
Yeah,
and have
and
fun.
wrestle and keep them all in check.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so good. Um, in terms of like, like chronic illness or like, the diseases that you went, is there any like, well, what do you think starts those processes? Obviously, it's like a long term of ignoring things, but do you know where that might stem from? What we shouldn't ignore other than proactive work?
Yeah. I mean, there's an enormous answer to that question because
Yeah.
there's so many things that start off free radical creation in the body. Free radicals are just like electrons that do a lot of damage in the body,
Yeah.
and inflammation, and so I guess yeah, unhelpful food choices are one. Obviously, not working out is another one because the body just
Mhm.
starts to waste away, and we don't actually use our muscles or our bones, and that's actually one of the main reasons a lot of people get osteoporosis in their older age, which is the fracturing of bones, and it's particularly common in white women.
Mhm.
It's just because we sit down and do nothing.
Mhm.
If you actually use the muscles and the bones, they would need to maintain themselves, right, on a molecular level. But we don't do any of that. And then the first time that you do something or you slip, that bone's not been really used under tension for years, and all of a sudden it breaks, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so food, working out, clean water, making sure that you've got a fluoride and a chlorine filter
Mhm.
is important. I think that's one of the easiest hacks you can do for disease prevention as well, is buy yourself a water filter, not one that's on the front of your really fancy fridge that tells you what day it is. Like literally buy a filter that's external that you can get the tap water or the rainwater and put it through that filter for all the things you do with food and drinking. So it's so easy because you spend what, I don't know, somewhere between $300 and $1,000 once ever. And
Yeah.
you keep it forever, and then you've got clean water for life. Sure, you've got to update the filter, but it's much cheaper to do that. So it's another one. I mean, if you're in cities, you can't really get away from the air. The
Yeah.
air's full of brake dust from cars and trucks and fumes and stuff like that. So there's not much you can do about that. But if you're doing a lot of the other stuff, your body's detox abilities will be better. Because a lot of people say, "Yeah, we've got a liver." And that's what some of my doctor friends will say to me when they're listening to me rant and rave. They're like, "Yeah, Maddie, but we've got a liver." And I'm saying, sure, we've got a liver, but it wasn't designed to deal with this many chemicals on a daily basis. So the backlog of work that the liver has to do gets stored
Mhm.
around the body, right? Gets stored in body fat, gets stored in your joints, gets stored in your brain, because the liver doesn't have the capacity to process that toxin immediately because there's so many toxins coming in,
Yeah.
which then suggests that maybe we should do detoxes annually, maybe, detox from heavy metals that we've breathed in or consumed. So that's another place disease can start is, maybe you're exposed to mold for a long time without realizing. Maybe you've got a heavy metal accumulation in your body that you didn't know about, or you've been blaming something else for, like, oh, I'm just not motivated enough, or my psychology's not in the right place. And it turns out, oh, actually, I'm loaded with heavy metals,
Mm. That's
and I had my
yeah.
own experience when it came to blaming my psychology for my lack of motivation and focus and depression and stuff like that in the last few years. And I just thought I was a bit weak. And I was like, oh, I'm such a millennial. I'm so fucking weak and pathetic.
Oh
Like,
my God. Yeah.
yeah. And it turned out that just because, I live in this modern world, my testosterone was really low.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah, which I actually had no physical symptoms of. And what I mean by that is really obvious male physical symptoms of low testosterone, which is usually low sex drive, never get erections, all of that kind of stuff. I didn't even have that. And then I went and got it tested, and I was like, whoa, it's really low. Started taking a bunch of supplements, none of which are testosterone, by the way, just to clarify. I'm not
Hmm.
taking TRT. They're all Chinese herbs, and got my testosterone right up. And my productivity, focus, mental health has been rock solid ever since.
Amazing.
Um, so, sometimes we can blame something for a problem when the problem's actually somewhere else in the
Hmm.
system. So yeah, all of these places can be cause for disease to begin, or free radical or inflammation to begin. Old injuries that you don't fix, that just slowly cause you pain over a long period of time, leak inflammation into the body. So yeah, there's so many answers to this question.
Yeah, fair. So basically just like reduce the input of like shit and the
That's
input
yeah.
of like, yeah, just putting pressure on your body basically. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, of course, there's a whole conversation as well around relationships, life purpose, meaning, energy, intention, which everybody starts to roll their eyes and say, that's a bit woo woo, Maddie. But
Is it?
people that hate their lives don't really live very healthy lives,
Yeah.
You don't want to like do good things or feel motivated or inspired if you hate everything or hate your partner or have all of these regrets. And so moving into that energetic space of what actually makes me feel good. How do am I in a good relationship? Am I treated nicely by people? Do people violate my boundaries all of the time? Because that all feeds into that story of I'm not worthy, I'm not lovable, therefore I shouldn't eat healthy, therefore I don't deserve nice things, and down the spiral we go.
Yeah. Yeah. And are you just reacting to the world that's around you, and instead of, acting with purpose or just forming what's around you? Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Interesting. So what's something that like extra that you do, like the heavy metal detox, or something that like not everyone needs to do, but I'm curious, like daily or weekly or yearly or monthly?
Oh, okay. As in my personal life.
Yeah, in your personal life for your health, mental or
Yeah.
physical, to be fair.
Yeah. I mean, what do I do? I mean,
You're very structured, so just curious.
I mean, maybe it looks
Maybe
like that
not.
from the outside.
Just
It's the
bursting
highlight
at that.
reel.
Yeah, bursting that perception. Yeah.
Yeah. What is something I do that's different? I don't know. I mean, I do filtered water. I work out every day, every 2 days, probably on average.
Mm.
I testosterone supplements. I got all sorts of supplements, as you can imagine, being a nutritionist. Yeah, I kind of do. I probably do a bit of more water fasting than the average person.
How
Sort of
often
like,
do you do that?
well, I went through a phase where I did it every quarter. And that it feels amazing for me at least, and I know what I'm doing, I might add.
How
People
long do you
shouldn't
go
just
for? Yeah, fair.
dive in. Um, I listen to my body. It's sort of usually 3 to 5 days. The longest one I've done is about 9 days.
Wow.
Um, but I was in a space where I could do that and very chill, not much stimulation, not much activity. But yeah, so that's probably something that I do. Now it's more probably on an annual basis at the moment, but I prefer to just listen to my body, and I know my body well enough now to know what I need to do and when I need to do it. So yeah, I guess that's probably something a bit different that I do that's probably most people wouldn't do or might feel scared of trying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fascinating.
So
I like
yeah,
that.
what about you? What do you do that's like different to the average person with your
Oh,
health?
with my health.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting, eh? Oh, I don't know. I've just recently changed my diet, as you know, because I did carnivore because I had a lot of inflammation, and that really
Hmm.
helped actually.
That's great.
Um, that was an odd thing that I did. And it was really good. But now I'm going to work with the naturopath on Tuesday, and it actually, I did like a test, and I looked at my test results recently, and I was like, oh, that makes sense why carnivore worked. And I'm like, now I'm trying to just work back to being, being able to eat everything, and it not affecting me. Pretty much I
Yeah.
can eat soft vegetables and meat, so I'm still kind of good.
Okay, good.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, but when we talked to, yeah, I added sauerkraut in, which is not normal for carnivore, but why not? A little
Mhm.
bit every day, and that was really
Great.
helpful. So yeah, that was a random thing that not everyone does, I guess. And now we're like, my partner's like preaching about how great carnivore is to like random strangers on the plane. And I'm like, who even are you? Not in
It's
like
funny.
a weird way. Yeah.
I've got my little healthy checklist thing here that I use with clients, but I also use it myself. And I was like, I wonder if there's anything on here that I do that's a bit weird.
Yeah, totally.
And there definitely is. So, how I was talking about the testosterone thing before. So,
Yeah.
most men in the modern world, especially if you work inside, are low in testosterone, right? And
Yeah.
the easiest and cheapest way to jack your testosterone up noticeably within a couple of days is to ice your balls.
Oh my God.
It's literally
Actually.
on my checklist, ice every day. And you do
Sunning
it.
your bum hole type fucking.
It's in that category, but if you think about it, it makes sense, right? Men wear tight clothing
Yeah.
these days. They wear multiple layers of that tight clothing, and your testicles are on the outside of your body because they're meant to be at a cooler temperature than your core
True.
body temperature. And
Yeah.
so most men then go and sit like I am right now in a leather chair or a pleather chair on top of those multiple layers of clothing in a warm, insulated office. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also bathe and shower in hot water again. And then we get in beds, which are layers and layers and layers of doonas and duvets and blankets. And so all of this is all part of what's, lowering the testosterone in the modern man, plus shitty
Oh.
food, stuff that's in the water, blah, 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 fluoride. So part of the schedule that when I work with men, if I can get their head around it, is that at some point during the day, and ideally before bed, and you can do it multiple times a day, is 10 minutes. You sit on ice. You've got a layer, wearing some clothes because you don't want to kill the boys. Um, But yeah, is to cool down
Love
that
that.
area of your body, like because it's meant to be cooler. Because historically, we'd be outside, we'd only have one layer if we're lucky of clothing on, and all showers would be cold, right? So that's what's
Wow.
changed. That's one of the major reasons that men's testosterone is tanking, and it's free and easy to get it through the roof. And middle-aged men will quite literally feel like they're 30 again.
Oh, fuck. That's so cool.
The
All right.
results are
First
very
thing I'm
rapid.
telling my partner. And
Yeah.
title of this podcast, Maddie says ice your balls.
Well, the guy that made the icing the balls thing famous is from Melbourne. He's a mate of mine, Lucas. He's
Oh, okay.
he's a naturopath for men's health, and he's done many webinars on it. He's got a Facebook group with thousands of people in it, and it's all dudes icing their balls, and like just yeah, the feedback and comments on his YouTube channel and stuff are enormous. And so yeah, I've been doing it for a couple of years now, and it's so obviously beneficial. It's free, it's easy. It's
Makes
just
sense.
yeah,
You should
yeah,
be
it's
out there
amazing.
like in the air with nothing and like cooling your
Yeah,
balls naturally. So that makes sense. Interesting.
exactly. Exactly.
Can
So
you
there you
use
go. There's
just
some
like,
fun.
yeah, can you use just like the shower head in cold water or do you have to sit on ice?
Oh, that's a very practical way of thinking about it. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. For sure.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk someone into that. Anyway,
Well, the
it,
other, I mean, the consequence or benefit of that is obviously men get much hornier, right?
yeah.
They're much more promiscuous and sexually active because they're like, I'm loaded with testosterone.
Nice. That's an easy way to talk your husband into it. Anyone listening?
Yes. It's funny though, because a lot of the men that I've spoken to and partners of the women that I work with, often libido and sex drive and intimacy is a part of the conversation.
hmm
And men would rather take 10 supplements of which they can't pronounce because they're Chinese herbs and they're different Ayurvedic things. They'd rather do that than ice their balls because it sounds a bit weird.
Wow. Yeah, what is it with that? How do you get people like around you onto these things? Like, it doesn't have to be that, but even just onto using a different kind of oil or life stuff. Like, do you have anything for that?
Well, I mean, I guess I have a benefit in the sense that I have a medical scientific background. So
True.
it kind of just naturally
Unfair
comes with
advantage.
a bit of credibility.
Yeah.
Um, but at the same time, well, men are a bit easier to talk to as well because I'm just like, hey, I did this and I get this result. Do you want the result? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, we'll do it. Like,
Fair.
and you can kind of challenge men's ego a little bit more than you would a woman,
hmm
and just be like, so you're telling me you're too soft to sit on ice? What a man you are.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you can't go at the this is good for your health angle. This is just how soft are you? Come on.
Yeah, totally. I've done that before with people, and I'm like, so the thing that's going to break you is a couple of blocks of ice,
Yeah.
right? And they're like, all right then, Matty, I'll try it then. I'm like, there we go. There we go. Take the
Nice.
bait. Take the bait.
I love it. Okay, I'm gonna try that next time. Is there like an equivalent for women?
Yeah, love. Love.
Oh, I meant
Like,
like in like icing your balls, but yeah, love's a good approach for women. Yeah.
yeah, totally. Oh no, women's hormones are far more complex, and the
Shit.
whole pregnancy, menopause, modern day woman is yeah, her hormones are cooked. And I would go as far as saying a really controversial statement, which is that the cost of feminism is a woman's hormones.
Mm-hmm.
Because a woman operating to be just like a man, the consequence of that is that you're working out a body that's meant to rest every 2 weeks for a lifetime. And so your hormones have been compensating for a lifetime. And then that's why we get so many people in menopause that can't lose weight, that are, having attributes of their body be very testosterone and masculine driven, hair on their face, a lot
Mm-hmm.
of depression, a lot of anger, no sex drive. And they feel stuck and nothing works for them. No diets work for them, because they've done 40 years worth of hormonal damage trying to keep up like a man, which is not me judging women for wanting more and having more. And I'm in support of anybody doing whatever makes them happy. But there is a reality to the fact our biology is different. And if we behave, if men behave as women and women behave as men, there's going to be a consequence to both genders, hormonally, because we're physically built different. And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I've been on that burnout back there. So now, like, what can we do? So as I'm approaching potentially menopause, and probably the listeners are not approaching that close. Let's just say that. But it can come as early as 35. I heard. Is that?
Yeah, it can. It can. You can
Yeah.
see symptoms. Yeah.
What can
And
we
I would say
do?
that it's getting earlier because we're so hardcore driven. It's, yeah, women aren't resting like they need to. And this isn't me saying that men don't experience it. Like those dudes with
Mhm.
rock hard beer bellies, that's cortisol, stress driven. A
Yeah.
lot of men don't have sex drives. They don't have libidos. Their testosterone's through the floor because they're also not looking after themselves.
Mhm.
So it's not I'm not just saying it's women that suffer in this, in this situation. But yeah, I would say that it's happening younger and younger because we're working harder and harder, basically.
Yeah. What can we do to not be like blindsided by those? Because I don't want that like triple threat of like, all the all the stuff. Like you gain weight, you go crazy, all that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's to honor the feminine cycle,
Hmm.
which is, probably not appealing, not doable, and not what people want to hear. And what I mean by honor that feminine cycle is that, in ovulation, the ovulation window and, the week that you bleed and stuff like that, they're weeks that should be much slower, right? You should be recovering your body, particularly ovulation, right in the middle of the hormonal cycle, is because that's a time where your body, even though most people listening don't want a baby in most of their cycles, right? That window is still your body preparing to create life. So whether you like it or not, that's what the body's doing. So if you put that through a high stress environment when you're meant to be relaxed, you have to overcompensate. That's what I was saying before. So if you think about every 2 weeks, you should have chilled out in your whole life, and instead you made the week before go 2 weeks long. So you went into overdrive every 2 weeks. You're essentially borrowing from the future. And so I think stress, and again, this goes without saying, holistically, it's going to be working out, it's going to be food, it's going to be the clean water, it's going to be everything. But I think at the core of this conversation is stress and overdrive, which, as you sort of said before, leads to burnout and leads to just this sense of hopelessness and despair and, what is going on, and depression and suicidal thoughts, which doesn't mean that a terrible menopause experience is not going to happen. But I believe that you will reduce the length of it and hopefully delay the beginning of it.
Okay, great. There might be hope yet.
I
Even
think
with
there
this,
is.
yeah, even with this podcast, well, like I'm fortunate I run my own business and do this myself. So I block
Mhm.
out that week, and now I'm gonna block out more of my ovulation because you said that.
Yeah, it's a sweet spot.
Yeah, because some people are like, there is a lot of like strength during your ovulation phase when you're like working out. So some people push it hard there. But I guess
Yeah.
if you listen to your body, is that still okay?
Yeah, yeah. Generally speaking, like weeks 1 and 3 should be the same, and weeks 2 and 4 should be the same. And by the same, I mean the way that you approach it.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of 1 and 3 is a time to go intense, hard, try a bit of intermittent fasting, try some heavy weights. Whereas weeks 2 and 4, that's where you want to be a bit easier on your
Mm-hmm.
body, because weeks 2 is where that ovulation window begins and it's like creation of a possible baby. So you want lower stress because your resources are still going to your reproductive organs to prepare for that. So you want less stress there. And then, of course, when your body's gearing up to get rid of that stuff that wasn't used, so before the period, which is the week where the cravings go crazy, the chocolate, you feel most emotional and out of control, those weeks. And that's week 4, interestingly, is the most common week that women quit diets,
Mm-hmm.
because that's usually the week that all the
Wow.
cravings came back that you thought you were on top of. But again, if we add stress on top of that, we add, all of the other things that we've mentioned that are not helpful, it just makes it easier to give up on yourself and all of the negative consequences to be worse than they could have been. And I know that the person listening is saying, oh, that's nice, Matty. I wish I could chill out every 2 weeks, with my job and my 3 annoying kids and my husband and my mortgage and all of that stuff. I'm not negating the fact that this idea is challenging.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe that the world we have created has sent us in this direction of suffering these consequences. And so we need to begin the process of moving towards a world which is more helpful of the female cycle.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, perhaps like we could just choose to be like, okay, I'm not going to let anything affect me this week, like emotionally. I'm not going to like catch the carrot and just like keep chasing that, because if that makes sense, like
Yeah.
yeah, not tagging on to the stress, but like, okay, well, it's stress is happening. I'm just going to let it go by me this week, especially. Yeah.
Yeah. Having some energetic boundaries.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Especially with like work, I can only like the 9 to 5, I can only imagine. Just kind of tune it out if you can.
Yeah. Good luck with that.
Yeah.
Says the two people that left the jobs and got their own
Yeah,
businesses.
because it was fucking horrendous. Yeah, agreed. Fair enough. Okay. Yeah, that's all right. Um, we have to wrap up soon, but I kind of want to ask you just one like deeper thing, I guess. Like, what kind
Yeah.
of like criticisms do you have like in your mind, like tries to tell you that you battle? I like to ask this on this podcast.
Oh, I love that question. And it's funny because I was telling a mentoring client that I've got because I have a couple of people that reach out and say, "Hey, Maddie, I want to start a podcast or I want to follow in your footsteps," which is obviously amazing and
Yeah.
incredible that
Hello.
people think that.
Yeah.
And so I've got a couple of little people that I mentor that are beginning their journeys, which is awesome. But I had this conversation with one of them this week, which was about the fact that even this week, I've felt like my business is failing and everything I'm doing is failing. And the criticism I have constantly is that I'm not able to sell myself well enough.
Mm-hmm.
I had like this is just one of those weeks of being in business where absolutely zero people purchased. I spent a lot of my time on sales calls and it's hard not to take it personally, It's like this is my creation, one thing, and two, if I don't get paid this week, nobody pays me. It's like in a
Mm-hmm.
job, no matter how lazy you are or how much I didn't do, I still got paid the same amount compared to my productive weeks. Whereas now, even if I work really hard, I might not get paid at all.
Yeah.
So I often beat myself up for, like this I've gone into a place where I'm like, oh, why do I even think I can be a business owner? Like, why did I even make this stupid choice 6 years ago?
Yeah.
The
What
last
benefits did
week,
it really bring me?
yeah, but like 2 weeks ago, I was like, I am the definition of success. Like,
Yeah.
everybody wants my stuff. I'm such a good salesman. So
Can
yeah,
relate.
I go on that cycle all of the time.
That's nice
And
to hear. You think only women go through that. It's because it's the emotional cycle that follows the actual cycle, but I'm glad you go through it.
oh,
Yeah.
all the time, all the time. And sometimes I get off client calls and I just think, oh, I really don't think I did a good job of that one.
Mm-hmm. You can
Um,
always try again though, which is the cool part of that.
yeah, and
So,
even with podcasts, sometimes I get off a podcast, that I'm interviewing someone and I'm like, oh, I sucked. Those questions were awful. Like, where did
mm,
they even come out of my head? Like, why did I ask that? I was probably too tired, and I make up all these excuses. And then that'll be an episode that people message me about and say that episode was awesome, and I'm like, what?
yeah.
I have no idea about anything.
In what is even real anymore?
Yes. So, but no, I go on all the same loops as everybody else, and um, I think
Right.
yeah, I just think that I just try and make the good feelings just slightly longer than the negative ones. And then over time, you make a small step forward, small step forward, small step forward. It's not that the negative ones aren't there. I think the skill set really is turning those around faster and faster, not
Mm-hmm.
their absence, the ability to turn them around.
Yeah, I agree. Shortening that window of like self-loathing or whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So,
Yeah.
and,
And
and
really
personal
looking back.
responsibility. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. And personal responsibility is what you teach for like your health as well, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, like, I really make sure that if I feel like I've let somebody down or it wasn't good, I take ownership. I've
Mhm.
gotten off podcasts before and been like, I'm sorry, I just was not in the game today, like, and people are usually really understanding. And same with clients, even if a client signed up for a certain package and they're struggling, there's a part of me, I can't leave them hanging. I'm just like, all right, let's get on a one-on-one call. Like, let's sort
Mhm.
this problem out, because I feel, I've invited people onto this journey. It's my responsibility to be there for them. And so I never want to feel like I'm letting anyone down, but, inevitably you do, especially with the larger audience that I'm accumulating over time. I can't help everyone, and I
Yeah.
can't get it right every time. There's plenty of haters that take one sentence that I've said, and they're like, "Oh, I can't believe you think this, blah blah blah," and that hits me because I'm like, "Oh my God, did I get it wrong? I'm not even that smart. People tell me I'm smart all the time, but I'm actually dumb. I'm masquerading. I'm an imposter. I'm lying to the world about everything." And spiral down just like we all do.
Yeah, just like we all do. Yeah, I learned that like the statistic is the same. 50% of men, 50% of women have imposter syndrome. And I'm like, oh, thank God. Not just women. So
Oh,
thanks for
so
sharing.
often. So
Yeah.
often.
Well, it's hard because you're just like trying to live in your body and then at the same time try to remember like all the stuff that you've done and that's actually like legitimate and like, and like, but not trying to be like living in the past at the same time.
Yes,
It's a very hard balance, but trying
it
to look
is.
like, okay, I can do this. Yeah.
Yeah, and not coming across like an arrogant wanker.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think you do. I don't think you do. Whoever says that, I'll fight them. It's fine.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
So good. Oh, I wanted to ask you because we both love cars. And I was wondering what was like the car poster in your childhood bedroom? A random question. And would you ever still buy that car?
I love this question. I had lots of car posters because I went through a phase where I raced cars actually. So I used to race drift cars in a previous form of my life, and I now race go-karts. But as a kid, I had a BT1 Lamborghini Aventador poster. I had a Lotus poster, but I would 100%. I'm 100% still gunning for the orange Lamborghini. Like, still 100%. That's what I want.
I can see it.
Yeah, I'm going for it.
Nice.
I'm going for it. In the meantime, I'm going to get myself a Toyota Supra probably next year. I've test drove one of those a few weeks ago. And the new one, by the way, not like Fast and the Furious version, the latest 2024 model, which is pretty cool. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. But I love cars. Yeah.
Did they put a lot of electronics in it that are gonna track?
Well, there is, but it's still manual combustion engine.
Yes.
Yeah. You won't see me driving an EV, especially if it's a sports car. Oh.
Yeah, it's a bit disappointing.
That would be so sad.
Yeah.
What about you? What's the car that was on your or your bike that was on your wall as a kid?
Oh, literally, I'm pretty much at the bike that I wanted, which is pretty cool.
Awesome.
Yeah. I don't know. I always wanted a Bugatti, but like I'm not a Bugatti person anymore. I don't know why. Yeah. I don't know. I'm kind of getting there. And now I just want a 4-wheel drive, and I'm gonna take women adventuring in my 4-wheel drive. And that
sounds amazing.
My goal. Yeah. Clearly priorities have changed, but still like bougie, but like nice. I kind of want to just take like a Porsche 4-wheel driving, but like they're shit and they're gonna fall apart anyway. So but just for the sake of saying that. But yeah. Nice. Love that. Great. Okay. So, what's one piece of advice? I was asked at the end. What's one piece of advice you'd love to leave people with?
Oh, one piece of advice is take ownership, basically, because that can be applied to any area of your life. Which is that start taking ownership of where you are, the world you've created, the situations you've experienced, and only from there can you make forward movement, because otherwise you're a victim and you're waiting for somebody else to help you, and that doesn't last very long because you start realizing nobody's coming to save you. You have to save yourself. So, which is not me saying, I'm not saying that you should negate what's happened to you or the life experiences you've had. You've just got to change the story and make them empowering rather than destructive so that you can move forward.
Beautiful. Love that. And very true in business where you're like, okay, I've started this idea and now I'm the only person that follows through on it.
Yep, that's our life.
Yeah. A lot of business owners listening. So yeah. Welcome.
Okay, good.
Love it. Amazing. Thank you. So what was is there like any upcoming like programs or anything like that that's happening that anyone can join?
We've got our doors open most of the time for emotional binge overeaters, people that have tried lots of diets and still isn't working. So if you want to work on that, just come and knock on the door, basically. And then the podcast is moving to YouTube. And by moving to, I mean, we're just focusing more of our content production on a YouTube platform. So it'll still be in audio, but yeah, how to not get sick and die on YouTube is probably a good place to go and hang out with what we do from here on out. Otherwise, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that same stuff that this show's on.
Yeah, amazing. And your website, you still have that up?
Oh yeah, mattylansdown.com.
Yeah,
come and hang out.
And you're not on Instagram. Well, you are on Instagram, but you're not always there, right? Most people in this podcast are on Instagram. So
yeah, one step at a time.
Because you can still follow him, Matty.Lansdown, I think it is.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here. And that was amazing. It's so nice to hear your stories and everything and like get all that perspective. So thanks for sharing.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks. Cheers.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. I do hope you enjoyed that. We are exploring our comfort zones and our edges with every episode, every guest, and every episode I do by myself. If you have enjoyed this, please follow us on Spotify, leave a 5-star review, or a review on Apple Podcasts. It would mean the world to us. We get to grow and have more informative guests and more provocative guests if that's what you want. I am so down to see where this grows. In the meantime, follow me on Instagram at amanda.petra__, and I would love to chat with you in the DMs. What hit home, what didn't, what came to mind. It would be really cool. So I will see you there, and thank you so much. See you in the next episode. Although our podcast presenters and all guests strive to deliver accurate information, they cannot address your unique circumstances comprehensively. Therefore, the content shared by any speaker on this platform is not personalized advice for individuals and should not substitute professional medical or health guidance. It is crucial to consult a qualified medical professional or for personalized advice. Additionally, always seek guidance from a healthcare provider before making decisions regarding your health or that of your family. Furthermore, it's essential to recognize that what works for one person may not work for another, emphasizing individual responsibility for health decisions as promoted on our show. Thank you so much for listening to the episode, and we will see you on the next one.